Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we take a look at where the Detroit Lions roster stands now that free agency is underway and the draft is coming up next month. I have a special guest joining me today, Detroit Lions beat writer Kory Woods from MLive, to share some insights and perspectives on the Lions as they reshape their roster and get ready for next season. We'll get to all of that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, this is Billy Sims, and you listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Kory Woods, Detroit Lions beat writer from MLive. In addition to his written work, you can catch him using his vocals on the Dungeon of Doom podcast with fellow beat writer Ben Raven. Kory, thanks for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And, you were interviewing me before a Lions game a couple years ago. It's nice to have the chance to have you as a guest today, and you're nice enough to let me do some of the question asking this time. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Well, you know what? It's like I said, like you said, I interviewed you before a game. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, it's been so fuzzy. But you know what? The great thing about that is that as part of my coverage or a part of my role in the Lions beat, before games, I go out and I talk to fans and I talk to people, and you never know who you're going to meet. And hey, me and you met, and you extended the invite, and now we're here talking on your pod, and it's just a really cool aspect that I do like about the home games, because every week it's a different story, and no Lions fan are the same except for the passion they have for the team.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. And that is cool. I love how we're kind of coming full circle with this.
Yeah.
Well, we are right in the thick of free agency. I mean, proof of that is the Lions just signed somebody minutes before we started recording here. Now, we'll get to that in a minute, but the first few days are in the books. Roster turnover at the top. More starters and regular contributors are changing this year than at any point in the last 3 to 4 years. I'm not surprised by it. It is logical, but I'm going to admit it's still a little bit of a shock to the system when you see so many familiar names departing. How are you taking it all in?
I'm not really shocked at all, to be quite honest. If anybody has paid attention to what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have been saying and just been reading the tea leaves, some of these exits we probably should not be surprised about. Graham Glasgow, not one you should be surprised about. There was talks about him potentially retiring, or whether this was his last season here. He was still under contract, but read the tea leaves. Same thing with Taylor Decker. He was contemplating retirement, then he came back. But again, I know we're probably going to get into the Decker a little bit more, but still a situation you probably could have. I don't think I've foreseen his release, but his future with the team was up in the air. I think that's fair to say. The only out of the exits that have happened so far, there's a couple that did shock me. Now, first, I do want to say this: a lot of these exits are guys that are a little bit older, over 30. So they're getting. It seems like they're cycling out some of the older guys to cycle in some of the new blood. I mean, until I think if I'm not mistaken, until they officially sign Teddy Bridgewater. Right now, Jared Goff is the oldest player on the team at 31, if I'm not mistaken. So There's that. But with this team and the way they're operating right now, I'm not really shocked at the way that the free agency was going. Just Roy Lopez is the one that sticks out as that was the one that I was shocked that did not get done. He was so good for their run defense and in the interior last season. I just thought that when you look at the money that he got with the Cardinals, to return back to the Cardinals, I'm like, did they not have that to give to him? Did they not offer that? We'll never know. But hey, he got a nice pay bump. He's from Arizona. Got a got a hefty pay to go home. Hard to blame the guy for that one. And I'll say the only one I would say it didn't shock me that he left, but I was just kind of taken aback they didn't get the deal done. And that was Alex Anzalone. Again, just for when you see the money that he signed for with the Buccaneers, it's just like, okay, that's not a deal you guys could have gave Anzalone. I mean, he was your best coverage linebacker, and to see him walk out the door now, that's a five-time defensive captain you have to replace. I mean, probably was going to be going ahead and he's giving the green dot to Jack Campbell, probably signaling Jack's going to be the captain at some point. But again, this the way Anzalone was respected in the locker room and what he brought to the team overall and his relationship with Dan, I just thought they would have figured that one out.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of guys you mentioned there, and some big changes. But you are also right. If you listen to Dan and Brad, they're not going to come out and tell you straight up because
Yeah.
you can't show your cards to the
Yeah.
rest of the other 31 teams. But they don't lie. I mean, they're if you can read through it. I mean, many times you go back after something happens, and you're like, oh, I picked up on that. And I guess let's start with the David Montgomery trade.
Mhm.
Okay. They didn't mince words. They said he has to want to be here. Were you surprised that David Montgomery wanted to leave, or is it the Carey's desire and realizing there's only one football and there's so many playmakers and he wants to be a bigger part of it? And no matter who's on this team, there's so many parts.
So there's two parts to that. I'm going to go with what I thought and then what came out today.
Okay.
So David Montgomery has said all of the great things and by accounts from me, he appears to have been a great teammate. I have nothing bad to say about the guy. But when he was here, he was RB1 those first couple of seasons, and Jahmyr Gibbs was RB2 last year. Obviously, Gibbs became RB1, Monty became RB2, and the discrepancy, it was there. Gibbs got a significant amount of the shares. I don't think Monty's was that much of a steep, but you can see it's a clear changing of the guard. And I'm not surprised that he wants it out because he still feels that he has a lot left in the tank to be a feature back. That was my opinion. I'm like, I think he's okay with the split carries when he's the feature back, but I think that he still believes that he can be a feature back in the league. So if there with the rumors that he wanted to be traded, it didn't surprise me. Now, what kind of made me pause for a second was during Super Bowl media week when he was speaking with NBC Sports. He said that his conversation with Drew Petzing was great. He was looking forward to, stay with the team. They had a brief convo about what his role could look like and et cetera. So you kind of thought like, okay, maybe they're smoothing this over. And then, boom, some of the reports start coming out. And back to like you said, we both said Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, they don't lie. At the end of the season presser, Brad Holmes said that he has to want to be here, but in the event that they cannot, get that done, they're going to put him in a place where he can best be utilized, and that's good for him. And what did they do? They traded him to one of his preferred destinations. And what came out today, the other part that backed up my theory was he says that he still feels that he has a lot left in pretty much the paraphrase that he says that he has a lot more left and he wants to show that he can be more than a power back and that he can be a leader and etc. So it was part of that. I don't think that he had any issue with Gibbs or anything like that. I just still believe I just think that he believed that he had a lot more left to show as RB1 in this league. And you know, once running backs get to 30, the treads start coming off a little bit. So he wants to maximize what he probably feels is his last couple of years of his prime, man. You know, hard to blame him because I know I'm getting along with it, but it's hard to blame him because Jahmyr Gibbs is such a dynamic talent that you cannot put him back in a backup role in an RB2 role. So it worked out for all parties except for probably the Lions in this case because I don't think they wanted to get rid of him, but with the way things were, they had no choice.
Yeah, I look at it as well. I still remember when they signed him, and it was
Yeah,
amazing because I knew what he was in Chicago. I thought
yeah,
Chicago underutilized him. I thought the Lions fully utilized him in the first couple seasons, and then you obviously saw it change. He was the best luxury any team had in the running back field to have him and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
We were spoiled. And he
Yeah.
is extremely good, and I expect him to do well in Houston. And so bummed he wanted to leave, but the way I see it is football players want to play football. And
Yeah.
like you said, you've only got a short window, and if you don't want to spend half of that on the sideline. And
Absolutely
so
not.
so I wish him well. I appreciate everything he did in Detroit. I was thrilled when he got here, but with the emergence of Jahmyr Gibbs, it's a luxury. And when you have other areas on the roster that need attention, in many ways, it's okay for the Lions that he wanted out. And you talked about it. The Lions try to do right by the players. And that's one of the things that keeps people coming here, keeps the clubhouse in a good area, good way. So Dave Montgomery's gone. We'll get to the guy they've got replacing him, but let's talk about the other big departure that you mentioned, which was the Taylor Decker thing, the left tackle, where it kind of went back and forth. Some people brought up visions of Frank Ragnow. He's coming back, and now he's
Yeah.
not. And I think it was 14 million or something like that was the cap hit if he was still here. And so some people thought, well, even at that price, why would you not keep him? And so, the Lions had that time during the offseason when he was thinking about it. I think you said it caught you off guard the way it went. Are you surprised? Because there still is a need at left tackle, and you're going to have to either draft or likely spend more money than what you would have paid Decker.
So it's an interesting thing with the Decker situation, and I'm gonna just again, I'm just giving you my side of it,
Yeah.
obviously. So we were at the scouting combine. Well, first off, we got to go back to the end of the season. Decker was really emotional.
Yeah.
That he was contemplating retirement, which was not a surprise to any of us, just the way that he was talking throughout the season about how, his shoulder wasn't really getting any better. He was talking about his quality of life and et cetera. And we all expected that at some point, me or Ben, who's my partner in the Lions beat, will be writing some type of Decker retirement story. And then the scouting combine came, and we asked Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes both about Taylor Decker's future with the team. And just to kind of go off of what Dan said, that they would love to have him back, but even with Decker coming back, they would still be looking to add a left tackle because of his injuries. And just for fans who may not know, there were times where Decker was not even practicing in the days leading up to games. He was just suiting up for game day, and he still missed three games last season. So, it made sense that it would have been good to have the continuity, but it also made sense to bring, to add some depth because just it's not it's not Decker's fault that he's dealing with the injuries, but at the same time, in the Lions end, you can't rely on him 100% to be there with what Dan Campbell said, diminishing returns in that chronic right shoulder injury. So I think an hour after, so it's kind of funny.
Oh,
After
yeah.
Dan said that, I wrote a story. Literally an hour later, Decker said, I'm coming back for the 11th year. And I think from what the report said, from what the reports I read, is that Dave Burkett of Detroit Free Press, he said that they asked Decker to take a pay cut. He was due 18.2 million this season. He said no and requested his release. And I'm not shocked as far as Decker goes because it's like, hey, I know I could be a team guy, but I want my money. So everybody wants their money. But on the Lions end, I understand it as well as like, hey, we're trying to rebuild this thing on the fly. This is a big chunk of salary, and you have not played, throughout the whole season. We have concerns about you week to week. Maybe they were trying to get him to work with him. And so, it happens. I understand the Lions end of it. I understand Decker's end of it too, because who's trying to really take a pay cut? So it's just unfortunate for the team and everybody around that the split had to go down that way.
Yeah, and I think he had 2 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
I figured even if he came back, this was his final year. I figured there was no way he
Yeah.
was playing two more. It was going to maybe be there to be a transition year for somebody they
Yeah.
brought in. Here's the other crazy question is, do you see the possibility of him suiting up for another team in 2026?
Well, here's the thing. If it's about money, no. If it's about just love of the game, I felt that I was disrespected or not appreciated, and but I still want to continue my career. Yes, because I mean it could be an Anzalone situation. Anzalone turned down big money, or reportedly turned down big money offers from other teams to take the deal with the Buccaneers. Now, I don't know if the Lions were one of those teams that maybe offered him a little bit more money. I would probably lean on I'm kind of in the middle of whether they did or didn't because on the one hand, you have Angeloni saying that he wants to retire as a Lion. On the other hand, he's probably thinking like, I deserve this deal way earlier. I'm going to go somewhere where I feel appreciated, regardless of the money. So it could be one of those. It could be one of those. And again, I'm not saying Angeloni said that, everybody. I'm just saying I'm just kind of that's my thoughts on it. I think that Decker could possibly play somewhere else if it's about the love of the game, not about the money.
All right. Well, and again, we know all those injuries that he was
Yeah,
battling, and he was very candid after the season,
yeah,
and so it was gonna be an effort to get through next season as well. And I think the Lions, from their side, saw what happened last year when Frank Ragnow ultimately retired, and I think that was the first domino that hit everything else. And if that domino had stayed in place, you may have looked at a different season last year, and this could turn into a very long story, but I do think that Campbell and Holmes got the 9-8. They saw what happened, and I think what they realize is they want to get back to what they had before. And in order for that to happen, item number one is the offensive line has to be strong. And there's
yes.
other areas they want to improve on, but it's got to start there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the offensive line has in over, well, let's say you can say 2022, but 2022, 2023, 2024, that has been their, in my opinion, their strongest unit. And when Jared Goff has that clean pocket, when those rushers have those holes to get through, and that blocking is holding up, that is when that Lions offense flows like a well-oiled machine. When we saw the slippage in the offensive line play last season, I mean, Goff still put up numbers. All those guys still put up numbers, but it didn't look as pretty as we're accustomed to. They had moments, but that thing flowed like oil. And also too, not only the fact that I mean, yeah, losing Ben Johnson was a big deal, but losing Ben and then having your offensive line play slip, I think that was um I think that was just like the unperfect storm for the Lions, so to say.
Yeah.
So I believe by getting back to rebuilding an offensive line, I mean they added some depth on the offensive line with by when they got Juice Scruggs
Yes.
in the David Montgomery trade, and they signed Detroit native Larry Borom. So those are some good pieces. They still need to go get some starters, but they also went out and got a starting center and Cade Mays on what I feel is a very, very reasonable deal. A guy that I've talked to people who cover the Panthers who said that, hey, the fan base is not happy that he left Carolina. So, hey, Lions, if it makes you feel any better, you got a coveted center. So as long as they continue to dedicate their resources, hopefully we see at least them grab another tackler, guard, a starter. I mean, some lot of talent is coming off in that area, but I believe they're also going to dedicate some of those resources to the draft. But yeah, rebuilding this offensive line is going to be to me the key to getting them back to what we know them to be.
All right. Well, the Decker and Glasgow were not the only big guys to leave. Neither was Montgomery. You've already hit on Lopez and Anzalone leaving. I do think if the Lions were going to keep Anzalone, they would have extended him last year when he
Yeah.
wanted something. And depending when they're going to pay Jack Campbell, and you've already paying Barnes, so it's like it's a luxury, but it's a necessity. Some would argue because there's no denying what Alex Anzalone meant to the team. In addition to that, though, I think I mean, these are all defensive departures, is Meek Robertson going to Washington is one that I was like, oh, if they could somehow bring a Meek back. Do you think that Anzalone's probably your biggest departure, but the Amik one that impacts. I know they've picked up another defensive back, but what does that mean for the defensive secondary?
Well, I would say this. I think Amik had well, it's not even a thing he did. Amik had a down year last year, and that's because he was asked to play a lot of outside corner, which is not his strong suit. He's that slot, that nickel guy. And I believe in his first season in Detroit, I would call him one of the best nickels in the league. And he could took that step back because he was asked to take on a bigger role. And I think losing, if as long as they were going to have their starters healthy and he could really thrive in the nickel role, I thought he would have been primed for a bounce back year. But losing him is tremendous because aside from what he brought on the field, in that locker room, well respected, got along with everybody, and he brought a swagger to that defense that they desperately needed. I mean, I think everybody, a lot of people say what you want about CJ Gardner Johnson, whether his time here or not was productive or unproductive. He had a similar swagger about himself. I think that Amik brought that in a very positive manner because he always uplifting the teammates and was just a good. He was also in a really great interview after a win or a loss. Just a guy that would just shoot it straight, break down what happened, not hold anything back. So I think that was a loss in that regard. But to go out, get Christian Izien, a guy that is, you know, they have some issues at corner and they have some issues at safety. This guy can play deep, he can play in the box, he can play in slot. So being able to grab a guy with that type of versatility seems like a Dan Campbell guy. He's already spoke with Shep. They haven't spoken about where they want to deploy him yet, but they've already kind of like just they've really been highlighting his versatility. I think that was a key signing for them, and I wouldn't say ask him to live up to what a Meek did, but just what I got from the vibe of him, they're going out and grabbing guys that have a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of an edge to them. So, I mean, I think with the Izien pick, they need again, everybody, they need more. But I think Izien was a good sign so far.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these guys we're talking about that left the Lions got bigger contracts. And so they came to Detroit, they improved while they were there, and they left for even more.
I
And
mean,
fortunately,
Commanders gave a Meek Robertson a hefty increase in the payday, so you can't blame him for that. I don't know what Detroit offered him, but when I saw what the Commanders gave him, I'm like, woo, hey, it's been real.
can't blame him. No, that's exactly it. Fortunately for the Lions, Rock Ya-Sin's coming back though as well. He made an impact after playing for like 5 teams in 5 years. He stayed in Detroit now, or he is for a second season. His versatility in that secondary as well will be key because even though Brian Branch is expected back, we don't know what he'll be like when he gets back immediately, kind of like Aleem McNeil last year. And then there's just that mystery around Kirby Joseph, that uncertainty
Yeah,
of he should be okay, he can play, what's it going to look like, how long can it go? There's a lot of uncertainty around it, but they've got Rock Yassin back, so they do have some things going in the secondary. But like you said, I think they probably need to do a little bit more there because of that uncertainty at safety.
absolutely. And bringing back Rock Ya-Sin was really key again. A versatile guy that can play the deep, he can play outside corner. He's been and as a he's been a spot starter at corner for the Lions. And I thought in those instances, I mean, everybody, people are saying, "Oh, he got burnt." Every cornerback gets burnt at least one time, a few times a season, even the best one. But I thought that he did an exceptional job as a spot starter, in a rotational piece, and I just think that keeping some type of familiarity, continuity, good locker room veteran guys was needed because there were so many walking out the door. Obviously, this is going to be new faces, but you can't have too many of your good veterans walk out because I think as long as Dan Campbell is in place, the culture remains the same, but you still want to keep some of those guys in there. So being able to retain Yassine for at least one more year and on a very favorable deal, that was a to me that was a really key signing, and it's going to be an underrated one in my opinion.
All right, I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, offense to defense, but I
Let's
want to
go.
I want to jump over to somebody you mentioned earlier, and that's Teddy Bridgewater. Now, when Kyle Allen left, I was like bummed because Kyle Allen was like the most quality backup the Lions have had, well, since Teddy Bridgewater, but then
Yeah.
before that, since Sean Hill. Okay, and you're going back a ways, and so I was like, man, what are we going to do? I honestly thought I mean, it makes sense why Kyle Allen is going over to Buffalo. But I'm like, all right, well, what are the Lions going to do? Are they just going to bring in somebody of the caliber of like Nate Sutfeld again? Um, but they didn't. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater. And so does that signal anything to you? Does that mean anything? Or is it just, hey, here's a guy familiar with the system? Because I think that's really important is you don't have to coach a person up brand new. They know some stuff. But what's your overall take on the news that Teddy Bridgewater will be joining the Lions?
I think that is fantastic. In my opinion, I gotta stop saying in my opinion. Of course, you're asking for it. With Teddy Bridgewater being back, to me, that signals that the Lions they feel that they're still within this window. They went ahead and got a viable backup that knows Dan Campbell, knows this system. In the event that they get in a pinch and something happens to Jared Goff, they have a guy that can steady the ship. And when you have a guy like Kyle Allen, who I thought had solid command of the huddle, orchestrated the offense well, and he goes to Buffalo and joins his best friend and he again a guy you play for the Lions, you get a significant bump in pay,
Yep.
and to turn around and get Bridgewater back that quickly, I was wondering, so I was like, hmm, okay. Jameis is still under a deal, so that's not a Dan Campbell guy they could go after. Does Teddy Two Gloves come back? Literally, I think it was the next morning or next afternoon. Hey, Bridgewater's back, and I'm like, oh, there it is. So, I and also too was good for Bridgewater as well because, I mean, he's back in a spot that he's comfortable and familiar with, and also you have a backup that has a good rapport with Jared Goff as well. So. I just thought that was a really good signing, and not just for the fact that what he can do on the field if you get in a pinch. This is a guy that has been a mentor to younger players, especially one like Jamison Williams. So I think that's going to be a really good move for them. I wasn't shocked they got it done. I was more so surprised at how quickly it got done. Because I'm like, I think they might kick tires on Teddy again, but I didn't think it was going to be that quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because before it happened late, late, late as almost a last resort. And I think the same thing that my reaction was like super excited because I was like,
Yeah.
this was a better quality backup than I thought they were going to look for because I didn't think they wanted to spend a lot. And who knows what those numbers will look like in the end. But exactly, if Goff has to go out, we saw that happen when he was in the playoffs and he came in and a couple plays later, they had a touchdown. So you have a guy that you know if needs to step in, even if it's for a week or two or whatever, you've got competency. And again, anybody that's followed the Lions for any length of time knows that has been a rarity. When Matthew Stafford was quarterback here, if he went out of the game and Sean Hill wasn't the backup, you knew the Lions' chances of winning dropped to about 2%. And so you don't want to go back in there when you
No,
have that much of a loaded roster with so much talent.
absolutely not. I mean, like I was telling people, that backup position means quite a deal because, like we just said, let's just knock on wood or whatever. If Jared Goff were to be out for a week or two, or in that instance, in that Commanders playoff game where he took a nasty hit, he says he was fine. I still disagree with him on that. I would tell him that. I thought he was really. I thought he probably should have just came back in the second half, but neither here nor there. You got a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater who can step in and keep things flowing when stuff like that happens. If you do not have a QB like that. And let's say the Lions did not prioritize going and get a viable quarterback, viable backup quarterback. That means if Jared Goff goes down for any length of time, you basically are punting that game, and it's no disrespect to the players on the field. It's just the quality of QB Jared Goff is. You don't want too much of a drop off in that production and in that understanding of the offense. And with Teddy, you won't go through that. That's a guy that can steady the ship.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Well, let's talk about another guy they brought in. When the Lions ultimately traded David Montgomery, I was like, all right, you've got to bring in a veteran. You can't just have all rookies or second year players behind Jahmyr Gibbs. Isaiah Pacheco was a guy that a name that I was interested in. I know he's a recognizable name, and he comes in as a likely number two. He has had injuries the last couple of years, and his numbers since the broken leg are different than before. He is a little bit more removed from that. His introductory press conference was very entertaining, and he seems like, I mean, his personality is amazing, and he seems like a great fit for the way he was paraphrasing his conversation back with him and Dan Campbell. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Pacheco, and should more people be optimistic than pessimistic about this signing?
You got a motivated Isaiah Pacheco on a 1 year flyer for 1.8 million. That is a steal. And here's how I look at it. There's no replacing David Montgomery. No, there isn't. There's not. Sonic and Knuckles was Sonic and Knuckles. But if Pacheco is far enough removed away from that injury and he's really ready to go, and you see the fire that he had in that press conference, you are getting a motivated, angry runner. He was already an angry runner in Kansas City. Now you have that guy coming in here with a chip on his shoulder. And, you know, you could argue about whether he may have wanted to be an RB1 elsewhere. The fact that he's coming here and he has to know that Jahmyr Gibbs is RB1. You're getting that guy as a backup, or at least a guy that they can split carries with. That's crazy. That's nasty. And also, too, the Lions still have to rebuild this offensive line. They still have ways to go. But again, I still believe what Pacheco is going to be running behind in Detroit is going to be far better than what he had when he was with Kansas City. And also, too, as they rebuild this line, they have one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL in Hank Fraley. You have a coveted college and NFL running back coach in Tashard Choice. One, if you watch that press conference, Choice is already breaking down where Pacheco can improve. And what's the one thing that fans have I've seen in the comments from fans about Pacheco? His vision. Choice already Choice is already on top of it. This could it may not be Sonic and Knuckles, but it may be something that brings a different dimension to the Lions offense that can make it just as deadly. I think it's a fantastic signing, and it's one of those where, hey, if it doesn't work, it's a 1 year deal. This is what we like to call, and I'm pretty sure you've used this term before, low risk, high reward.
Oh, for sure. And Pacheco said, I think he said 8 teams were interested in him. And he chose the Lions, which again speaks to the fact that people still want to come and play in Detroit, which makes a lot of sense. And if 8 other teams offered him something, or 7 others, I'm not sure they were all cheaper than Detroit. You know what I mean? So he may
Yeah,
have chosen Detroit over some of that stuff, which again talks about the great opportunity the Lions are getting with this.
absolutely. And I also think he was probably looking at the way I'm curious to see what those other teams are, all of them, but he was probably just looking at the way that not only the Lions have traditionally had their two-back system over the past couple of years. But then you look at Drew Petzing, who's coming in as the new offensive coordinator, and Petzing, when he was with the Cardinals, they had a top rushing attack initially. So he's probably looking at that like, all right, this is a 1 year prove a deal. Where is the best place for me to go ahead and get the tape that I need? Detroit runs. Yeah, I'm heading there. Makes sense.
Yes, it does. And that's the thing. As great as Goff and the receiving crew is and the tight end group, Dan Campbell's a run first kind of guy. And
Yeah,
that's where we started talking about rebuilding the offensive line. You mentioned Juice Scruggs in the trade, Larry Borum, offensive tackle, brought in likely to replace the Dan Skipper role,
yeah.
but could be even doing more depending on what happens. I guess here's the big question, and I'd love your perspective on this. And maybe it's an unknown thing. We know they got Mays at center, and he's a guy on the rise, and he's got experience. But left tackle, right tackle, Penei Sewell. Do you think it comes down to if they can find a good left tackle, they keep him at right, or if they can't find a good left, they move him to left and then they grab a right? I presume they're going to draft one of those positions. Do you have an idea? Do you have a preference on what the Lions do with Penei Sewell on the offensive line?
This is going to be the interesting one because now with Decker out of the door, I'm just spitballing here, everybody. I'm wondering, do they go to Panay and ask him, hey, how do you want to play this? You want to stay at right, or do you want to go back to left, and then we still go grab somebody else? Personally, I think the best way to go about it would be to keep Panay at right tackle and then go get a left tackle. Hopefully for fans, they can grab somebody out there in free agency. I don't know who's left. I thought that Braden Smith going to the Texans was a pretty cheap deal, but if they go get a left tackle in the draft, I think that would be a really wise decision. But I think this is going to be one of those things that's going to be left up to Panay to decide.
Right. Well, I think the one thing we're happy about is that by them bringing in Mays, Tate Ratledge is not moving from right guard, where he did pretty well as a rookie, and that's good because you just build on top of that.
Yeah, that's the one that I just did not understand the the continuous conversation around Tate Ratledge moving to center. I get it because I get it, but at the same time I don't. I get it because, they cross-train all of their guys and you see the potential that he could be at center, but at the same time, he was solid as a rookie at guard and I just felt he kept getting better. Just go out and go get a center because you're talking about moving Ratledge to a spot he did not play a single snap at while at Georgia. It
Right.
just did not make any sense to do it. So by going out and getting somebody that has already been, done with the signals and everything like that, knows how to get the protections right, just just work smarter, not harder. And Brad Holmes did that with the Cade May signing. So bravo to him.
For sure. And I think the reason they they visited it the first time was when Ragnar retired, they're like, well,
Yeah,
Graham's best position is right guard. And
yeah,
man, unfortunately, the guy didn't get to play there the last 2 years. And so maybe they were thinking if he could fit and Graham's at his best position, but
yeah.
you're asking a guy to transition from college to the pros and in his rookie year play a position he's never played before. So it made sense that they kept him at right guard, and it makes sense to keep him there.
Absolutely. Because I was talking to Rowledge and I asked him, I said, what is the one thing that has caught you off guard or taken you aback on your transition from Georgia to here? And he said, the speed of the game. So you're gonna throw him in a, so if that's, if, and again, there's no shame in that because all of the players are going through with that, but you're gonna throw him in that kind of fire in a position he never played in. I mean, okay. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it, but and again, it's good they're not doing it because I just think that would have been a mistake with a team that I don't want to say they have. I don't want to say Super Bowl window or anything like that because who knows, but I still think that as constructed, they could still be a playoff team. And you just
Yeah.
don't want to you don't want to rock the boat too much.
No, you don't. And you know what? The other thing is you said it the right way. That's what the goal needs to is be a playoff team because any team getting into the playoffs has a shot at the Super Bowl. And
Yes.
if you would have asked anybody 10 months ago, if they thought the Seattle Seahawks were a good shot to win the Super Bowl, that wasn't on most people's radar. So the thing is, you never know how a season can unfold. You seem to get in the playoffs, and then you look what happened with a team like the New England Patriots as well,
Yeah.
right? Just get in, and then you see what happens. And you have to get in, though. Lions didn't get in this past year. So I think that's the other thing that's going into this retool is it speaks perfectly to
Perfect
something.
word. Retool.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even do that on purpose either. It just came out. But you're exactly right. It's not the other one that some people think is happening, but it's really not because there are. Do people forget how many Pro Bowlers and all pros are on this roster and the quality of it? There are some very good guys. Now, work needs to be done. You need to
Yes.
make some
Yes.
adjustments, and certain areas of the team might not be at the level they were last year, but hopefully some other ones are better. So we'll see what happens with that. I want to stay on the offensive line though. The extension of the offensive line, tight end. Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, both coming off injuries. So that's a big deal. I said for me, it was really important that they bring in a veteran tight end because you don't know in case one of those guys has something lingering and they're not as available. You want another person with experience. The Lions apparently are signing Tyler Conklin at tight end. He was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings a few years back. He played with them for 4 years. Then he went over to the Jets. And I don't know. I don't know much about Tyler Conklin. I can tell you this: the Jets gave him a 3-year, $21 million deal to play there for 7 million a year, and then he played with the Chargers last year. So he's been in the NFL for about 7 or 8 years. I love the fact that they brought in a guy who's got this experience. He's had some great seasons receiving the ball, 58 receptions, 61 receptions, 61 receptions. And so I thought this was critical. How important do you think it was for the Lions to bring in a veteran tight end to add to that room? And what else do you think might need to be done at that room?
I think it was a solid signing. I mean, first off, like you said, veteran tight end. This is also a homecoming. This guy's from
Yes,
Michigan. He went to Central Michigan and he played at Central Michigan. So, I'm not gonna say fire up. Well, hey, fire up ships. I'm an Eastern Michigan guy, but whatever. So, but I mean, it's just the
that's good
guy
of you.
that and if you don't look at his last season, I'm just gonna read the numbers because I wanted to pull them up. But last year, I mean, what? Seven, he only had 101 he only had 101 yards. Justin, not Justin Fields, Justin Herbert. It wasn't the perfect situation for him. I get it, but you're bringing in a veteran tight end, a guy that over his body of work before that warranted him coming in here, and also too, the if Drew Petzing is going to be running a lot of 13 personnel, then yeah, you need to you need to you need a host of tight ends. So being able to bring in a guy with the production he had, like I mean, again, you look at that year, boom, nothing to look at. But look at what he did in 2024. He had 51 receptions for 449 yards, four touchdowns. Year before that, 61 receptions for 621 yards. Year before that, 552. Year before that, 593. I mean,
Yep.
the guy has outside of last year, the guy has a body of work showcasing that he can be a quality pass catcher. I have to look more on him as far as his blocking goes and see how that is. But I mean, with the Lions, if the Lions are going to be running a lot of 13 personnel, they need a host of tight ends. And with as far as Sam Laporta goes, you're hoping that Sam Laporta comes back and he's at tip-top shape. But backs are tricky. And Brock Wright, he's dealt with some knick-knack stuff here and there. But whew, if those guys all come in healthy, you're talking about you're talking about Laporta, Brock Wright, and Conklin. That's a nice tight end room. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, I've saved this. There's one area we haven't talked about. I've saved it for a while because I didn't want you to overreact or twitch because it might be an allergic reaction. But it's the one that most Lions fans post about on Twitter, or at least had been for like the last 3 years. Defensive end. All right. Now, right now, they have a legitimate concern. They're short in quantity right now. There's only two of them on the roster, and fans are going to tell you, well, outside of Hutz, they've been short in quality over there for a while. So, I mean, there's a certain guy that I'm not allowed to name anymore that we hope the Lions bring in on free agency who has a prior relationship with Dan Campbell. Um,
I
but
know who you're talking about.
yeah, right. So, but the hope is, I think the hope is that they bring in a veteran and they draft somebody. But how do you see the defensive end position, and what do you think may or may not be done with it?
First off, I think that they definitely need to take an edge rusher within the first 2 rounds. That's it. It's. I'm
Yep.
not about to try to sound like a Rhodes Scholar about that. They need depth, especially. First off, I felt they needed to sign an a starting edge rusher, bring back AQM, Al-Quadin Muhammad, and
Yep.
still draft an edge rusher. Now you really need to go ahead and add to that edge rusher room. So, gotta address it in the draft. The guy and the guy you can't mention. I just think right now he has to be your zeroed in number one target right now in free agency because he has the familiarity. He's played 15 seasons, only missed 2 games. He's only had 3 years where he's had less than 7.5 sacks. Had 10.5 sacks last year. Respectable against the run, can set the edge. It makes too much sense. Bring him in, and he can mentor that young defensive line room. Maybe bring him in on a 1 year deal or bring him in on a reasonable 2 year deal and have the changing of the guard that way. But they have to start adding bodies to this room because I don't think that you can just go strictly draft with this. I don't think you can go strictly draft at edge rusher. Just hey, just gonna load up on a whole bunch of new guys. No, you need some experience on that line, and you need somebody that is going to be respectable opposite Aiden Hutchinson to take some of the workload off of him. Like this guy needs a bleep and breather every blue moon. So it's. I think that first wave of free agency, a lot of guys. I don't want to say guys got overpaid because hey, you're worth what somebody's willing to pay you.
Yep.
But some of those contracts I saw, I'm like, oh, Lions can't pay that. Lions can't pay that, except for Alquadin's 6 million with Tampa Bay. I said, y'all could have brought him back for that as a rotational piece.
Yeah, that number did catch people off guard. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, you're surprised about that one for sure. But also, that's right. Free agency is not over. And this is where the Lions have made moves in the past. This is when they brought in CJ Gardner Johnson. He didn't get the contract he wanted. The Lions brought him in on a 1 year deal. Couple elements worked out from it,
yeah,
others did not. And so, this is where an opportunity they might still be able to bring some guys in. And that's where anyone that was concerned or judging Brad Holmes in the first 24 to 48 hours, it's like, no, the first 48 hours, you're grabbing the guys that, are going to get paid the most and you maybe your biggest crucial need. I'm not saying defensive end's not a crucial need, but there are enough players out there that maybe you can still find one later.
yeah. And that's the thing. It's this second wave of free agency, that's where they have to go ahead and knock it out the park. I mean, I'm just trying to see who else is available, but I mean, that's what they have to do. They have to go ahead and start filling out the roster with some of these smaller deals. I mean, I don't know how much money they have right now, but I believe after that golf restructure, I think they had somewhere, give or take, around 50 million because I know his contract cleared up 32 million in space, but altogether, from everything they had, I think they had somewhere around 50 million, give or take. But
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see if that's going to go to free agents. We're going to see if that's going to go to trying to pay some of their own guys. I think that the only guy, just my personal opinion, that they probably need to give their money to right now immediately would be Jack Campbell, but people might disagree with me. But yeah, I think that knocking out this next wave of free agency. So if they haven't kicked up the steam by the NFL owners meeting, I would say don't worry, but it's fair to start raising that concern of where is this thing going?
Okay. All right. Well, like you said, free agency is still in the early days. There's still plenty of time for things to be worked out. But the next thing that builds a roster is the draft. And I think you and I might be on the same line here. I see offensive line and defensive line as the first two rounds. I think those are the areas
Yeah.
that you probably need because those where you find those impactful people. If it's an offensive tackle and a defensive end, uh, I probably agree with me on that. And if you don't, you can change it. But in addition to that, any other draft thoughts come to mind for you? Anything else you're looking for the Lions out of the draft?
Well, I don't think this has to be an early need, but I think it does need to be one that's addressed at some point in the draft. They're gonna have to get another cornerback. They just are. You cannot bank on the health of Ennis Rakestraw. It just is what it is. No fault of his own. He's not asking to get injured or have these setbacks. And then you just don't know exactly what's going to happen with the alleged off the field incident with
Mm.
Terrion Arnold. You have to prepare for that. So I think that cornerback is growing as an underrated need. I still think they need to go out and go add to that safety room. Granted, Christian Izien is very versatile. I think they just need to go in and get another safety anyway.
Yep.
But And also too, this is going to be interesting. I think later in the round they could probably look for another defensive lineman and try to add to that because you're losing Roy Lopez. That sucks. But now you got to wonder like, okay, what are you going to do about that room? Do you bring back do you bring back DJ Reader? I mean, he didn't he wants to be in Detroit. He just recently vocalized that. And if you do
Yep.
try to bring back DJ Reader, what's the ticket gonna be? I think that guy's gonna want to get his money as well. So defensive lineman and cornerback, those are two things that I think you need to address. And probably got to look at linebacker now too because of Anzalone going on. So they need a lot. That's why we got to go
Yeah.
ahead and that's why I just said this next wave of free agent this second wave of free agency is going to be very important because then you can go into the draft with a clear idea of okay, they shored up these spots. Now they just need to go ahead and just hammer, hammer, hammer here. But tackle and edge, those need to be within rounds 1 and 2, hands down.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And then yeah, draft those other spots. They've got a lot of draft picks this year, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
All right,
And
Kory, let me change a little bit. I want to ask a couple things about your job, maybe give a little insight to
yeah.
fans who don't always see behind the curtain. What is one thing you love about being a Detroit Lions beat writer that might not be so obvious to everybody?
Oh, well, I think it's obvious I like talking with fans. So let me just put that one down. I like being able to find a unique story and one that fans may not know they wanted to care about. It's a big reason why I like going out and talking to fans those 2 and 3 hours before kickoff. Really, maybe really, I like to take that back, 4 and 5 hours before kickoff.
Right.
because you get some of the most unique stories. You meet some of the most unique people. I can rattle off a couple stories just off memory. We talked about Eastern Market. I don't know if I met you when I was writing this story, but there was a guy they called down there, the governor, who held the Eastern Market parties. I was able to interview his wife, and they were having a big celebration. Like, he unfortunately passed last year, but he was just known for his big tailgate parties and gathering everybody together. It was super cold outside. I want to say, was it the Dallas game? Which game was that? One of those games it was one of those weeks it was ridiculously cold outside.
Okay.
And I just came. No, it wasn't Dallas. It was one of those games that was ridiculously cold outside, and I ran into a fan that had the Union Jack. I'm like, okay, he's not from here. Let me go talk to him. Him and his wife, they came over from Leeds, and just to come to the Lions game. And I said, "How'd you become a Lions fan?" Well, babe, back in the day, my grandfather came here to be a painter and started a family here and started this new family here and everything like that. I'm like, wow, that's an interesting story. um Met a Lions fan that has I don't want to say what ailment he had because
Sure.
I don't want to lie on him, but he had a physical ailment that he had to get some surgery done, some couple operations, and I just happened to bump into him, get his story, and his mom was I gave her my number so we can I gave his mom and his dad my number so they can kind of like give me more information because I had to walk back in. I shared the story with them. They're like, he's following you on social media now. He's sharing the story. You nailed this is perfect. And it's just those kind of things. Just talking to fans and being able to put out unique stories. Everybody's going to read a story about the game. Everybody's going to read a story about a transaction or what we hear from Dan Campbell. But being able to connect with fans, connect to the community, and see how much of an imprint this team has on the Detroit and the surrounding cities. That's the one part of my job I love.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's awesome hearing those stories and learning about all these different people that are Detroit Lions fans and how they are impacted. And you sharing those stories is cool because then other people get to learn about them as well.
And everybody has a story. Everybody has a story about how they came to their fandom, and no one story is the same. That's the great thing about it. So it's like, oh, I don't have to get stopped. It's more so like, oh crap, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna write this game piece. They did not play well. Versus, ooh, this is interesting. How am I gonna tell this story? Okay.
For sure.
It's fun. It's fun.
All right. Well, let me take you to a different direction here then. I think
Okay.
most people realize travel and being very busy during the season is a tough aspect of the job. And those are two very big items. But is there another thing that can make the job difficult that people might not realize?
For me,
Yes.
I have a 3-year-old son. He just turned 3.
Okay.
And I would say along with missing certain moments and milestones because of my job, I'm also missing family moments like these past 2 years with me going to the scouting combine, I've missed his birthday.
Okay.
And I've had to celebrate his birthday early. Because of the NFL draft, which was here in Detroit, I had to
Yep.
miss my sister's college graduation because I was reporting. It's and don't get it twisted. I love my job.
Yeah.
I love my job. But the thing about it is you literally have to love this job because you're missing milestones. You're missing important moments. You're having to miss Thanksgiving dinner because you're still at Ford Field at 7, 8, 9 o'clock writing stories out. Like, hey, yeah, the game ended about what 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'm still in there knocking out stories, and I'm getting to Thanksgiving dinner when the family is walking out. I didn't experience this last year, but my partner on the beat, Ben, his birthday is on Christmas Eve, or like right
Oh,
after Christmas. So it's
okay.
like he's missing family time, um, because he has to go to the Minnesota game and cover that. So it's the part that you just miss those family moments that it's really rough. And again, like I said, me as a first time dad,
Yeah.
missing out on a lot of those milestones is it's rough. But I get over it.
It's completely understandable, and I remember the media reaction when they're like, Lions are playing on Christmas too, and so it was like a double thing. You kind of get used to the Thanksgiving and schedule things
Yeah.
around it, but yeah, double holidaying it up like that, that makes it tough.
Yeah, it does. I mean, man, that's like Ben said, it's like, oh crap, I'm already missing. I already gotta tell my family I'm missing Thanksgiving. Now I gotta tell them I'm missing Christmas too. And
Yeah.
that is rough. And also too, I hate, I hate, I hate back-to-back Thursday games. Those are the
Oh,
worst. Oh
it's
man,
yeah.
you guys have no idea. I hate it.
Well, it's funny. The 1 p.m. game on a Sunday is the easiest thing to schedule everything around, but then you get the primetime stuff, and it affects some people's sleep schedules, and then obviously your work schedule and all that gets thrown out of whack as well.
Oh, 1 p.m. me all day. And you can and I you can and I will say this, I've talked to multiple players. They I'm not gonna say they don't like primetime games, but 1 p.m. is a favorite.
Yeah,
It's a favorite because it's that nighttime game, they're waiting their whole day for the game, as
right.
opposed to, hey, that 1 p.m. game, ah, time to get ready for work. Get right to it.
Yeah. Well, Kory, I've taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I got to ask, is there anything I haven't asked you, either about your job, what you do, or about the Lions in general that you'd like to share and let the listeners know?
Nah, man, you hit so many things on the head, and you asked some unique questions. This is a really fun conversation. I like unless you have more you want to ask me, I don't know what you didn't cover. This was really fun, and I'm glad that we were able to go ahead and have this conversation. You know, I'm sorry we didn't get this done sooner, but life was lifing.
100%. Well, before you go, then just remind the people of all the different places they can find your work.
Sure thing. I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I am on X. And Blue Sky, same name, Kory E. Woods, KoryEwoods. You can also find my work on mlive.com under the Lion section. And on top of it all, you gotta check out our Dungeon of Doom podcast, which is available on all streaming platforms, with me and Ben Raven. Uh, we've been the Dungeon of Doom podcast has been going on for a minute now, but this is like my second year with Ben doing it since me getting moved up in the ranks, and it's been pretty fun. And I gotta tell you guys who post podcasts, I don't know how long have you held. I got a question for you. How long have you hosted your podcast?
I'm entering my we're in my fourth season right now, fourth year.
This is my second year talking this much, and I have so much respect for people that can get on the mic because it is not easy finding your voice, hitting that cadence, being interesting, getting in and out of your points. And then, like me, I get so tongue-tied because I'm trying to make one point, but I got five and six other different ones in my head that I want to get out at the same time too. So I'm like, oh yeah, but what I meant to say was, it just,
Yeah.
I so much respect for you guys.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm going to tell people, check out the Dungeon of Doom podcast, and maybe just maybe you'll be their doomer of the week. And so get those questions submitted to them. They'll read them on the air. And so, Kory, thank you so much for taking the time. It was great talking to you. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot. Hope I get the invite to come back whenever.
You definitely will. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Again, a big thank you to Kory Woods for taking the time to talk Detroit Lions football with me. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Please tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on social media like Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on all major streaming platforms as well as YouTube for the video version. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reviews, comments. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.